Hi, Madhushree. Hello, Madhukar sir. Good evening.
Hello, Surbi.
Hello everyone.
Hello, Munish sir also. Vekesa, are you here? Still waiting.
I think Surbi today is the fifth session of webinar series.
Yeah, this is on social responsibility, circular economy and social responsibility, sir.
Okay, I saw a message in chat box that is related to fourth session.
Related to?
Fourth session of webinar series.
Oh, is it so? Let me just check.
मालिक साहब ये सुखाने स्टैंड है कुर्सी वहाँ से ले आओ कुर्सी का लो अरे रुको मैं करता हूँ तो बोले मैं यहाँ पे कर लूँ योर बाइस एक पीछे ली तो मजा आ ना मैं से आ गया एकदम यार ये आवाज खोल दी पापा ने देखो मैं पहुंची नहीं कि मुझे 4 दवाइयाँ दे दी ना
We'll just start. Vekesa has also entered, so we can start, I guess. Hi, Vekesa. Good evening. Hi, so we have all the speakers here right now, and I would request all the audience to keep their themselves on mute, and we would just want the speakers' videos on. Yeah. Great. So good evening, everyone. I, Surbi Singhal, welcome you all on behalf of International Council for Circular Economy. Today, we are here to host the fifth session of our webinar series, Transforming India's Infrastructure, with our experts joining us from varied industry sectors. This webinar series is aimed to bring together innovative processes, ideas, solutions, and dissemination of knowledge at a mass level. We are conducting this webinar series in collaboration with PM Gati Shakti Center of Excellence in Logistics and Supply Chain Management, School of Management, Doon University. I would request everyone to keep on mute and only use chat box for any communication. In our last webinar, we talked about circular economy and climate change, how circularity can help us reduce our carbon footprint. And today, the topic of our discussion will be circular economy and social responsibility. How can we ensure that all stakeholders benefit from this model? Before we start, I would like to welcome the speakers and the moderator of today's session and introduce them to you. Our first speaker of the day is Mr. Wekesa Zablon, founder and designer, Circular Design Nairobi. He is also the regional coordinator of the African Circular Economy Network, ASEN, organizer of the CEC Nairobi chapter, and founded the UON Berkshire Bike Share Program. Wekesa has extensive knowledge in understanding Kenyan plastics value chains, having worked as an impact consultant with Repurpose Global, a business development lead at the Flip Floppy Project, a community strategist at Winds Plastic Limited. He also participated in the development of course materials for HNU's UR Masters program, Circular Agro, Economy at University of Rwanda. He was one of the authors for an EU report on Africa's circular economy, and as a facilitator, he worked on the 2022 repair and reuse study funded by FCDO. Then we have Mr. Munish Chawla with us. He is the co-founder and chief happiness officer at D-Track and Jeevitam. Mr. Munish is an experienced entrepreneur who launched various startups in the hospitality, training, and NRI services sector, and a 28 years veteran of the sales and banking industry. He is the co-founder of Jeevitam, which is a livelihood platform helping vulnerable segments find sustainable livelihood. Jeevitam drives job fairs at a scale in 21 languages across the country. Mr. Munish brings passionate vision, perspective, and attention to detail into his work to unleash the voices of his clients and their businesses. Mr. Munish also shares his passion to help others find their own purpose and empowerment so that they can live the lives they truly desire. Now, our third speaker of the day is Mr. Madhukar Varshney. He is the founder of Rise Foundation. Mr. Madhukar is the founder of Rise Foundation and an expert in composting and establishment of Miyawaki afforestation. After working with Ericsson and various other corporate companies in India and abroad for 19 years, with a total 27 years of experience, Mr. Madhukar Varshney decided to pursue his passion for environmental protection. As part of this effort, he founded the NGO Rise Foundation in 2011. He's working as a coach with Complexity University and a consultant to many international social organizations like WWF. And Rise Foundation work includes environmental protection, women empowerment, and education. Our fourth speaker of the day is Madhushree Narayan. She is the program manager of Responsible Sourcing Initiative program, and she leads the development of the Circulate initiatives recently launched Responsible Sourcing Initiative, a systematic approach to building inclusive and resilient recycled plastic supply chain across emerging markets. With program funding from Mindrew Foundation and the Coca-Cola Company, the initiative aims to improve the lives of over 50,000 informal waste workers by 2025 through efforts to convene and facilitate all value chain actors to adopt harmonized responsible sourcing practice. In her role, she supports the ongoing efforts of the initiative that identifies and invests in projects across India, Indonesia, Kenya, and Vietnam with the aim of improving human rights practices and increasing the supply of responsibly sourced recycled plastics. She is also working closely with the stakeholders across the value chain. Now I'm handing over the session to our moderator, Dr. Sudhanshu Joshi. He is the coordinator, PM Gati Shakti Center of Excellence, School of Management, Doon University. Before I let him lead the discussion, let me introduce him to you all. Dr. Sudhanshu holds a PhD in supply chain management and is a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and Discipline Agile Scrum Master. He's a visiting professor at the University of Technology, Sydney, Australia, and has a 19-hour index with 1,200 plus citations from 60 plus publications as per Scopus database. His research spans sustainable supply chains, AI, circular economy, Industry 4.0, 5.0, and more. Thanks, Dr. Sudhanshu, for the collaborative efforts that you are making, and over to you now. And I welcome all the speakers to the webinar. Please, sir. Dr. Sudhanshu, you are not audible.
Yeah.
Maybe by the time Dr. Sudhanshu joins, I must say a very heavy introduction, of all the panelists which you do, and I could see you were really taking a lot of efforts.
So it's important to know the background of everyone, each speaker, what background the person is coming from, and what is the importance it is bringing to the discussion. So that's why we introduce everybody so, in detail.
Yeah. Oh, good introduction. That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
No, still not audible.
I would request everybody else to mute, and let's just check if Dr. Sudhanshu will turn on his mic then. I think this time he'll be able to, yeah.
All right, so all right, so am I audible now? Fine, that's good. So welcome you all, and I'm really grateful and thankful to all of you, dear esteemed guests, panelists, and participants. And a warm and heartfelt welcome to all of you for this wonderful gathering. And today we are talking about circularity and social responsibility as a great pleasure at the center of PM Gati Shakti Center of Excellence in Logistics and Supply Chain Management. As we understand that in the era of sustainability and responsive business practices, which are coming up like forefront of global discussion these days, the themes of our webinar resonate the theme profoundly. The circular economy, with its emphasis on reducing waste, promoting circularity, fostering a generic approach to resources, and guiding us towards a more sustainable future. Coupled with the core value of social responsibility, this model ensures the benefits of economic activities extending beyond profit margins to emphasize on well-being of the community and the health of the planet as a whole. So I welcome all esteemed panelists, Mr. Zablon Munish Chawla ji, Madhukar ji, Madhushree Narayan ji, for bringing together their well-skilled knowledge and experience on the same table, from circular design and responsible sourcing initiative to livelihood platform and environmental protection. The diversified experience promises to offer valuable insights into the challenges and opportunities that lie at the intersection of the circular economy practices and social responsibility. So now let me start the session. So being a moderator, I have ample of questions to ask today, and such a great, august gathering we can see. So let me start our first question with Mr. Wekesa. Zablon, having a great experience with ASEAN as an institution, which is dealing more on the African countries. So let me start with you, sir. Could you share some example where the successful circular economy initiatives in Kenya or Africa that have made a positive impact on the environment and the society? So some use cases during your experience with ASEAN will add value to the knowledge of the audience. Over to you.
Thank you for inviting me to have this cross continent share. So Kenya and the African continent are really working hard to make sure that they resist the influences of the linear system and we feel the impacts the most sometimes because of the strain on the natural resources and also just the pressures within the society. So some of the case studies that have really emerged in the past few years, I'll give an example of the beverage value chain. So the beverage value chain, for the big organizations, the big beverage organizations, we had a reverse logistics for certain bottles. Yeah, but that wasn't seen for their spirits business. So we have a lot of consumption of spirits here. And one of the problems that was causing was some of that glass.
I guess there is some issue with the network today. Shall I take the second question to the second, expert? I guess we should, revolve around. And if you see, we have Munish Chawla with us, who is a Chief Happiness Officer. So Munishji, welcome, and I have a question for you also. Could you please tell us about Jivitam Livelihood Platform and its role in connecting the vulnerable segments to sustainable livelihoods, and how this contribution is carrying up the social responsibility towards the society? So.
I think you're on mute, Manishi.
Thank you very much. Sorry, right. I was supposed to.
Pardon, my internet dropped.
Yeah, he's back.
I'm back.
Zablon is back.
So Rhodesia is an initiative that targets the glass industry, mostly the packaging for spirits, and they work with communities to return those bottles back to the manufacturer, because most of this, originally the beers are sold within recreational facilities, but spirits are taken home and they are within households and within communities. So they work with mostly the waste pickers, and they just streamline and offer solutions for that big corporate. Then one of also very exciting case studies has been around urban manufacturing and that space of food waste. So within cities like Nairobi, for instance, we have a huge problem of food waste, and certain hospitality, within the hospitality sector, that food is not allowed. They don't allow that food to, once the food has been put out, it won't be allowed to feed other people, but it has to be disposed. So we've seen organizations like Regen Organics that have set up these urban manufacturing spaces, and they're into regenerative agriculture. So they breed black soldier flies, and which cuts down this organic biomass by almost 70%. And the output is usually BSF larvae and fertilizer, and also briquettes. Now, with such setups, you're able now to move into that space of regenerative agriculture and also showcase that. And they don't only handle the waste in the hospitality sector, but they work within these informal setups to also handle that sanitation problem. Yeah, we also have quite a number of case studies that are working within the build and construction sector. So one of the problems that we face is PVC that comes from the building and construction sector. So a lot of cities are urbanizing, and one of the things is pipes. So the water pipes and the plumbing, they chop off a lot of PVC pipes. So we have Wenfa Enterprises that is taking these PVC pipes from the community, which are normally, and we our context here is we have a very Nairobi city is the city on the catchment area, right? So a lot of this waste is actually pushed into our water bodies. So what WENFA does is they take these pipes, then they process them into other pipes. So we have a pipe to pipe kind of enterprise here. So that's, yeah, so the input is a pipe, the output is a pipe. So we see like it's a closed loop. So these are some of the case studies that are happening within Nairobi. But when you look at Uganda, for instance, we have a lot of enterprises that are moving into organic materials. They are taking bananas. That landscape has a lot of bananas. So they're taking bananas and they make alternative materials, be it fabrics, be it paper, and some of these fabrics are actually used for sanitary towels. And these sanitary towels, in terms of their degradation, they are really regenerative because they don't leave a lot of environmental footprint. So we have quite a number of case studies that cut across the continent, but for the East Africa region, these ones are what seen that out an emerging trend.
That's really nice to know. Actually, not many of use cases are being discussed so far, and we are witnessing a lot of other. When it comes to other panelists, we have with us Mr. Munish Chawla, who carries 3 decades of great experience in terms of running up a variety of industries. And when it comes to a question, Chawla Sahab, we have a very relevant question to be a person who is running a platform called as Jeevam Livelihood Platform. I have a question to you. That is, what actually can we get some more insights on how Jeevitam Livelihood Platform is working? When it comes to linking itself with the marginal segment to ensuring their livelihood, and also how it is contributing to the fulfillment of the social responsibility of an enterprise primarily. And if possible, sir, please cite few examples where you're helping the marginal society and coming up with the more sustainable livelihood to them. What do you?
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for inviting me, and I really appreciate the panel which is here, and I would like to share my perspective. A very good question asked from us. So give a background. Jeevitam is a livelihood platform. We are a platform which is helping the vulnerable segments find sustainable livelihood and also in their social and financial inclusion. When we say vulnerable segments, they are the bottom of the pyramid work seekers. We call them migrant workers, blue collar workers, gig economy workers. We call them with different names, but these are the people essentially who are earning around 8,000 Indian rupees to around 20,000 Indian rupees is what they are earning. That is what they earn. And these people primarily are not very educated, right? And these people do not have access to internet or smartphone, or they do not know how to operate it. And third, they want to be spoken in their native language, right? English, and many times Hindi is not their favorite things. If you go in the interiors of Tamil Nadu, you have to speak in Tamil. You go to interiors of Gujarat, you have to speak in Gujarati. It's across India. So, these are the 3 attributes, and we are basically helping this segment. Now, the scale of problem which we are trying to solve, 800 million people in India, around 80 crore people in India, our government is giving them free ration. So we are giving them every month free ration. The person who are getting this free ration are vulnerable. That's why the government is giving them free ration. So the scale of problem which we, Jeevitam as a platform, is addressing is of this scale, 80 crore people or 800 million people. For people who are overseas, for them 800 million is the. So this is the scale of problem. And the livelihood problem is not an India-centric problem. It is a global problem. So you go to Nairobi, the problem of livelihood is there, right? What we have seen with our experience, we are a startup and we question the status quo, right? So when we are meeting the work seekers, and what we are finding is that work seeker is saying, hey, I'm not getting work opportunities. I want work. I'm not getting work opportunities. So that's a problem we see from the work seeker point of view. He wants more work opportunities. If we go to the work providers, all those people, corporate, startups, government and all, they say we are not able to find the work seekers, right? So on the one side, you have work seekers who are not able to find work, and there are work providers who are not able to find the work seekers. So where is the problem statement being said, right? The problem statement is of matchmaking, right? Wherein the people who need work should be able to go to the people who can give them work. That is one aspect of the population, the problem which we have solving, right? Because that is where. Second, educated, not having access to internet, smartphone, and want to be spoken, the way to interact is not the way we interact with the white collar work seekers, right? Because you go to the social media, there is so many Monster, Naukri, there are so many platforms which are helping people find work opportunities. But in these cases, they do not go on to these platforms, right? They, the way to contact them is not easy, right? Because how you contact a person through his mobile phone, they change their mobile phones with every new scheme coming in, right? So their mobile phone is never the same. Every 3 months, their mobile phones gets changed. Number one. Number two, they do not have any email ID. They are not on internet. They don't watch social media as much. And third, there are not many vernacular platforms, right? So you need to spoken in their native language. So getting access to them is a difficult challenge. So that is something which we need to sort out. You need to meet them in person. You have to talk to them in person and make them aware about it. So they have a very strong internal communities. The way they find it work is through their references, through their peers, right? My village person, my friend, and work. So they have been exploited by the contractors, right? Because they don't know where the work is, and or they have got the work opportunities through referral. So this has to change, right? They need to be more organized, and that's where Jivitam saw an opportunity, wherein we said if we can, reach out to these people using voice as a technology, right? So we said, okay, you do not know how to read and write, but you know how to speak in your own language. Please speak. You do not have smartphone or you do not internet, you have a feature phone, it's okay. And our said we are working in 21 Indian languages. So for any person who's seeking work, we made his life very simple, right? Like in Uber, you in 3 steps you are able to book a Uber. In 3 steps you are able to book through Airbnb. In here also we said 3 steps: call, register, and answer the calls coming to you for livelihood. That's it, and you will find livelihood, right? So we made it so simple. Today, as I speak, we have around 20 million work seekers on our platform, right, who are registered with us. We work impacted 1 million people in the last 3 years, right? That has been here. And this year, we are going to impact 1 million further. So this is what Jivitam does. Besides livelihood, financial inclusion, right? Which means besides livelihood, you have a primary livelihood, you have a secondary livelihood, you have a tertiary livelihood. We also help them in opening their bank accounts, getting them insured, getting them access to loans, getting them, helping them in saving money, because they have all the same aspirations as like you and we have, right? So we should have those financial inclusion to them. Besides, I work very closely with government in helping them access to the government schemes. And we also help them in democratizing the way they access the service and products and services. So Jivitam, from a social responsibility point of view, is working as a startup for profit, right? Trying to find a meaningful way to impact this segment from bringing them from vulnerable to non-vulnerable at scale. This is where we are. Thank you.
Many thanks. Your grassroots experience is helping lot many of aspirants. Those are lively associated with us, or maybe they will see our channel at the later stage, and a lot of insightful, initiative you're doing. We have with us Madhukar ji. Madhukar ji, as we know, is the founder of Rise Foundation with more than 3 decades of experience as a person behind NGO. He has into multiple positions. And I have a question which is more related to what Rise Foundation is doing. And can you let us know a few insights on composing and afforestation initiatives which are impacting the environmental sustainability and creation of the urban ecosystem? So, what are your experience with Rise Foundation? Please enlighten us. Thank you.
First of all, thank you to all ICC team and Surupi to reach me for this webinar. And I find it very relevant in current scenarios when we are facing a lot of issues related to climate change and global warming. If we see today in Delhi, there is a rain, which is not expected duration or weather in India. Many other places, the weather patterns are keep on changing in last 2-3 years. So in Rise Foundation, we are primarily working for environment, where we understood that the impact of climate change or global warming is going to happen to the people who are working outside, like people, you can say farmers, or maybe the other people who are working in open areas for any reason. Maybe you are a marketing guy, maybe you are working a construction, you are doing a construction work. So it is going to change their ways of working, because if we see recently COP27, we are talking about rise in temperature. So and if we don't take any corrective action, then it is going to be late. And considering that, I thought that I worked in corporate where I was part of a team where we launched 3G services in India first time, 4G services in India first time. And I established a lot of mobile networks. And so considering that, I thought I have done much in the corporate and I should do something for the society, because the cause is so big and each and every person need to do something. Some may do less, some may do more. So out of that also, I had a lot of interest in food waste, especially in composting, and I was doing personally for last couple of years. And I found from the research and from the reports that the cities like urban, I live in Delhi, the major problem of waste is because we mix the waste in cities. And the other thing, the area like residential is not taken care much, because if you see, you set up a plant for some circular economy or for some waste management, so your more focus is on supply chain and your survivability or viability, so that you can run your setups. But in that scenario, usually people shift to industrial waste. It can be food waste, maybe in industries. It can be plastic waste in industries, and then the areas like residentials are deprived. Nobody comes there for recycling. And if we see in the city, 60% waste is the food waste, which usually comes from the residential areas. So that need to be taken care. Otherwise, we will never solve the problem of this waste. And then now it is bringing more problems on table. Like maybe 5-10 years back, we were not discussing about food waste as a methane emission source, which is now it began. So, and it will be moving towards worst scenarios. So that is what I saw as a problem area, as an opportunity to guide people, to guide communities to do composting. And the other problem in city like Delhi, that the enforcement of solid waste management rule is not very strict. So people are not very positive to do it. It need a lot of awareness to create and then share them that why they should do composting, why they should do waste segregation, which is a common problem across globe. And the other part, forestation, we are doing plantation and other things related to plantation for last 10 years. But we saw the problem size like air pollution in Delhi, which is a news of an hour, is so big, and the same thing is now happening in Mumbai. So that deforestation is happening faster, or the development is happening so fast that we are unable to fight with this problem of air pollution. So I was looking a solution which can at least do something better than what we are doing. So we found that Miyawaki afforestation technique, which at least grow plants faster, at least 30 times, 10 times faster than the conventional method. And it create a dense patch, green patch, which can give you value or benefits of a forest, like we get noise related suppression of noise pollution, suppression of air pollution, and improvement in biodiversity. So many research paper was introduced where it shows the benefits. So being a project management person, I saw there's a lot of scope is there, because again there is a problem, and which creates the opportunity of creating more green patches in the urban areas, because we are talking about heat islands and other things, so which is going to increase more and more if we don't take corrective actions now. So these are the two areas where I am focusing with my team. And in last 3 years, we have done around 20 projects in Delhi NCR, around 6,000 plus plants we have did plantation in smaller and bigger projects. And then in food waste composting, I have our team has given awareness to more than 5,000 people, and around 500 people are doing composting at home, although the number is very less if we see the population of a city. But somewhere people have to start. So I am taking it a challenging task, but we have to do this. Thank you.
That's really nice. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for adding a lot of insights on, and the initiative you guys are taking is very important actually, and sensitizing people and getting them trained to use waste management for multiple purposes is something important. And one thing I really it's a take home for most of us is how the new techniques of afforestation is helping to create more outcomes and creating the ecosystem. It's really much appreciated efforts that you are doing, your firm is doing. And we have with us a young lady named Madhushree Narayan. Madhushree, as informed by the host, she's into circular initiatives, and she is into orchestric, comprehensive approach to fostering multiple, recycling plastic supply chains, specifically into the emerging market countries. And out of the aim she made is to actually to change more than 50,000 waste workers by 2025. And for this initiative, she got a lot of funding from multiple, funding agencies. As a program manager over the period of time, in the last, almost a decade time, she turned out to be a very effective program manager. And I have a question now. In your role as a program manager for initiating the circular initiatives, when it comes to a responsible sourcing initiative, would you tell us how this initiative is actively fostering the development of inclusion and robusting the recycled plastic supply chains specific to emerging market, and how it is actually comply with the goal that you targeted for 2025?
Thank you, Dr. Sudhanshu. Thank you for having me here today, both Surabhi and Dr. Sudhanshu. Before getting to your question, I'd like to briefly introduce the Circulate Initiative, the organization I am from. So we're a not-for-profit with a mission to address the ocean plastic pollution challenge and build circular and resilient, equitable economies in emerging markets. We have a two-pronged approach to do this. We deliver cutting-edge research, and we also build high-impact programs and partnerships backed by this research to address the systems barrier in the plastics recycling value chain. So, Dr. Sudhanshu, to your question in terms of how we're really going about addressing or achieving our goal to build more inclusive plastics value chains, the first thing I'd like to address is what do we really mean by inclusive value chains in the context of the plastics recycling sector, right? And it's critical to identify the key stakeholder here. And for us in the responsible sourcing program, it is the waste workers and the informal waste workers that we have at the central focus to the initiative. They're one of the key actors who are often missing from having a seat at the table when we're discussing on how to build recycling networks across different economies, and how do we really consider some of the challenges they face in really building recycling economies and supply chains which are more resilient and inclusive. They're at the forefront, of course, of collecting a lot of the plastics out in the ecosystem and diverting that away from leaking into the environment or into the landfills. So they play a very critical role in building the solid waste management systems across urban cities, as all of you are aware. So for us at the Circulate initiative, the Responsible Sourcing Initiative, the program built from a very urgent need that's out there in the ecosystem. On one hand, you have corporates and large brands who made commitments to procure recycled plastics and integrate recycled plastics within their packaging, right? But there's also a challenge over there because when working in the recycled plastic sector, there's a sense of a social perceived risk or a reputational risk because there are certain human rights violations and challenges and practices that we see more prevalent in the informal recycling sector. And at the same time, these challenges also make it very unattractive for investments to come into, building the solutions needed to address these human rights challenges. And on the other side, you do really need these systems in place to get the volumes of recycled plastics that today brands need to, address the commitments that they have in place. On the other hand, you have regulations coming up. You have the regulations coming up which require brands to address their human rights practices in their supply chains. You have the European Union's Corporate Social Responsibility Directive, which requires businesses to do, very considerable due diligence within their supply chain to address any human rights risks. So there's a growing demand to understand what are some of the human rights practices that need more, a lot more attention to build a more comprehensive and coherent network where we're addressing these challenges. And the Responsible Sourcing Initiative was born out of this need, right? So through the program, our approach is to really address how for companies, and when I say companies, this is brands, it's also recycling companies, how for companies to address human rights challenges or practices within their supply chain when creating more responsible source supply chains. And this is a very pressing need at the moment because there are principles and guidelines out there, the human rights, the UN guiding principles on human rights and business and human rights talks about what really needs to be addressed in the supply chains. However, it's more overarching guidelines or principles. What we need more is something that can be operational within the supply chain, which can be applied at different tiers, at a manufacturing site, at a recycling site, an aggregation site, and even at a collection site. Because the human rights practices and violations that you see in the entire recycled plastic supply chain is far more greater, of course, upstream, where you're working in collection centers and you're working in aggregation centers. And these are the value chain actors who are often challenged in terms of resources and understanding how to deploy some of these, tools and practices to be put in place. So for us, we're really looking at building a very simplistic understanding and common language in collaboration with all stakeholders in the value chain to understand what really responsible sourcing means. And very, very clearly, a lot of the challenges we see with this sector is exactly very similar to what Mr. Munish Chawla was talking about in terms of lack of, fair wages, no bonded labor or choice of work, health and safety at workplaces, or absence of child labor, right? All of these, again, are overarching guidelines and principles, but how do we ensure that this is practiced at a collection center level, which is where, we have a lot of informal waste workers coming and selling to that particular collection center. So I'll share more about the work streams and how we're going about doing this in different geographies. But as you mentioned earlier, Dr. Sudhanshu, for us, the key goals is to really look at implementing some of the work that we're doing in key geographies. And when I say some of the work, I mean a harmonized framework. And I'll share more what I mean about the harmonized framework later, where we're looking to have at least 25 brands. These are large global brands who are procuring recycled plastics, aggregators, recyclers, adopt some of the simple social requirements that's needed to address human rights practices within their supply chains, have work with global certification bodies and standard setters for recycled plastics to ensure that the social compliance is a part of their program, so that they not just look at material traceability of plastic, but they also look at human element in terms of what are the practices being followed when you're sourcing these recycled plastics. That's on creating the standards side. On the implementation side, like you rightly mentioned, our aim over the next 3 years is to improve the lives of at least 50,000 waste workers. We're doing implementation projects in 3 different geographies. And the way we approach implementation projects is we work with one brand and their suppliers in the value chain. So for example, we work with one brand in a country and their recycler, a subset of their aggregators, and a subset of their collection centers. Because our approach here is to showcase that these practices can be adopted, and what learnings we get from these implementation projects will feed back into refining how we define the framework that's needed. And of course, at the same time, we're also looking at increasing the amount of recycled plastic being sourced responsibly, right? So the number we've given ourselves, of course, is 100,000 tons of recycled plastics to be sourced from these value chains over the next 3 years. What's also key in terms of a goal that we have for ourselves is to increase transparency in these supply chains. Through these implementation projects, we also have the opportunity to ensure that the practices being followed are also traceable, and we create more transparency within these supply chains. Therefore, it can be more vigilant, and the key learnings from these supply chains can be also emulated in other geographies that we work in. And because we're a not-for-profit, everything that we do in terms of the awareness that's being built, the knowledge that's being built, toolkits, documents, all of that is to be shared with the recycled plastics ecosystem. And I'll share more about how we're going to do this, but our approach is a full value chain approach where we're working with waste worker associations, recyclers, brands, civil society organizations, a representation of all of them to create this harmonized framework, which is try to develop a common language for all the stakeholders to understand what responsible sourcing should mean, and share all the resources that's going to be developed through the program widely, so that policies that's going to be built, such as EPR is also coming up in different countries right now, are more inclusive. And they also have the human element in terms of how, what's the kind of incentives to have waste workers be a part of it, and how they need to be considered when making these policies in place, also built through the resources we're creating.
Oh, that's really nice, actually. And a lot of, the practices, the short-term goal, the vision you have discussed, and the human element especially, and the way you're taking care of the whole stakeholders, 360-degree approach of taking care of the stakeholders, something is really appreciated, and a lot of things are coming up. And let me move directly to our speaker Madhukar Varshney, which is related to they're doing to waste segregation, composing, and waste recycling when it comes to plastic specifically. So it is a question related to RISE Foundation itself, and the question is more related to how RISE Foundation initiatives are helping environmental challenges for positive environmental changes and community engagement. So I'm just trying to extend what Madhushree was talking about. We now our focus is more on how the stakeholder is at the focal point, and how RISE Foundation in your case is helping and involving stakeholders and community together. Thank you.
In our projects, we are engaging the people. We are engaging the municipalities if we talk about waste management thing. And as you mentioned earlier, that sensitization in the people is very important, because these all problems related to environment. And if we see the industrialization and the emissions percentage, everything which is increased in last 100 years, is manifold than the earlier age we had. So it is sort of a people are clueless about the issues and the size of the issue. And for the afforestation, like we do in schools and the parks. So we had an example, we had a feedback from the school, like young children's, they don't know about the forest or green patches at all, because they are born in urban cities, and they may have some background of the rural area, but they have not seen the forest at all. So that sort of thing we found, that if the person, if a boy or girl has not seen the forest or jungle, how we expect them to establish those things when they don't know how it looks alike. So that those are the things which are missing very fast. And we find, like we people says that we are the guardian of the planet, we are not the owners, and we got this as a gift from our ancestors. So, and what we have made means what we are giving to the next generation. We just need to think that. So in that manner, we see a lot of sensitization is needed, and a lot of work is needed by the government or under governance also. And means all our work is related to engagement of stakeholder. Some projects we have done under CSR also. So some corporates are coming forward, and for afforestation and for this waste management thing, like you mentioned, WWF. So we are doing a project with WWF with they have a Ek Prithvi model school, where we are implementing the waste management solutions. Usually in climate change education, we talk about three things: waste management, then kitchen garden, and third is water conservation. And these three things, like if we see food, air, and water, the three essential things which are needed to maintain life on this planet. And we have all damaged, and it is done by humans only, because we are the only most advanced species on this planet. So it is our responsibility, and we find that every stakeholder need to participate now. It is not only corporate, it is not only government, it is not only citizens. All people need to do, because the problem size is so big that it cannot done by any one or any two stakeholders. It needs the support from everybody. So in that way, we are trying to sensitize people.
Well, rightly said, Madhukarji. We should start from somewhere, and it's everybody's responsibility. So aggregate responsibility leads to creating sustainable ecosystems when it comes to taking the responsibility to this environment. Rightly said. So let me extend what you spoke about, and we have with us Mr. Munish, who is running a great and very successful startup. So being a person who is into technology-based businesses, how do you perceive the convergence between social, responsibility and entrepreneurship?
I think a good question, and very relevant to what Jeevitam is doing, right? We are a startup, and the nature of a startup is to question everything, challenge the status quo, right? Unless you challenge the status quo, ऐसा ही होता है तो फिर नया तो बदल नहीं सकता. New cannot happen unless you challenge the status quo. So, when we looked into the livelihood space, and we looked into the platforms which are already there. So there was Naukri, Monster, TeamLease. They have been there for decades, right? And the very fact, all these migrant workers, when they started walking back home during COVID, peak of the COVID crisis, is everyone woke up and started analyzing the problem they have. As I started, 800 million people in our country are getting free ration, and that is the scale of the problem. So whatever problem, Madhushree has given or Mr. Madhukar has given, the scale of the problem for them, they will agree with me, is huge, right? It is not a small problem they are addressing to. So like livelihood, it is a scale, right? You can't, if today I'm asking Madhushree a question, why 50,000, why not 500,000 people? If today she is enabled to do 500,000, will it be more helpful to her, Madhushree? Probably the answer she will give is yes, big yes, right? 50,000 in 3 years is she's saying, because that's what they are able to look at it, and that's where they can impact. So what we said was, there were two questions for us which were very relevant, and this is to answer to your question. When we were looking at, should we become an NGO, should we become a not-for-profit, or should we remain profit? That was a big question we had to answer, because the money which was getting 40,000 odd crore is available as a CSR money every year, for the industry, for various things. But for that, you have to be an NGO. Do we become an NGO and take that money? We said no, because unless we become a sustainable thing, we can't scale it, right? So it has to be sustainable. Whatever we do, unless the sustainability question is answered, you can't do scale, because you're always dependent on the donor every year for you to do scale, right? Today, this CSR, if this policy has changed, will they give me money, right? The reality of the CSR industry is also there. 1% of the NGOs are getting 99% of the money, and 99% of the NGOs get 1% of the money. That is the reality. I am an outsider. That's what I'm told by attending various conferences, right? So this is a very close group, and only few people are able to work and manage. But the problem is huge. So how do we bring a profit element? You bring the element wherein if I get profit, I do more, and I do at scale, which is unprecedented. It's something which we are looking at. And when we are looking at this livelihood problem also, today, we got a mandate to identify the rag pickers, right, across, and we went deep inside into it. Where is the problem over there? Why rag pickers? There were two problems we found in rag pickers. One, they were not finding it remunerative enough, right, to do that job in the way they want to do it. So, अगर मैं 20 से 25,000 रुपए कमाना शुरू कर दूंगा, line लग, there will be a lot of people who will like to do it. Second, from ages, there is a dignity of labor issue on this side, right? This work is not taken as a good work, right? So nobody wants their kid to become a rack picker, right? The last job everyone wants to do is a rack picking job, right? So how do we get dignity out of it? How do we make it more sustainable is something which is there, right? So sustainability question, if you are able to answer, that is there. The intersection of the technology, because the problem of the scale which we are handling, right, is something which is there. Without technology, it will not happen. So, for us today, if you ask Jivitam, what is Jivitam? Are we a livelihood platform or we are a technology platform? If you ask reality, we will say we are a tech platform, right? We are a technology platform. We are using voice technology as an interface. Google says, bolne se hoga. We say, bolne se hota hai, right? Because the language is an issue. What, rightly Mr. Madhukar has been talking about, right? Creating awareness, right? Logon ko pata hi nahi hai. People don't know what they don't know. Today, if they know about, the kind of impact of the things which they are doing, will have their own children, will have on the society, has on the country as a whole, I think they will refrain from doing certain things. It's just that they are not aware. How do we make it aware, right? We need to be little resourceful, little innovative, and doing that awareness. I'll give you an example, sir, right? We have this new education policy where it says 50 hours of training has to be given to teachers, because that's a community which, if it is aware about things, it will give it to the students, and students will give it to their parents, and all those things will happen. There will be a circular effect on that side. So teacher is one big community. We looked at it. And what did we find? One of the leading organizations, CBSE is one, when we were doing with CBSE. So they said, help us with teachers. With all the resources available to them, they could only train 30,000, right? And when they joined hands with us, in 6 months, we were able to train 300,000 teachers across India. Physical training, we could do it. That's the power of collaboration. That's the power of, if we work along with each other. We understand the problem. We understand there is a sustainable solution. We understand there is scale. We understand everything. But, right, like today, if I look into, Mr. Madhukar, I like what you are doing. I love what Zablon is doing. I like what, Madhushree is doing. But for me, you all are islands of success, right? You are doing in this world. Why can't we scale? Why can't Madhushree do 10x of whatever she is doing? Why can't, Mr. Madhukar do 10x of whatever he is doing? The only way he can do it when he starts collaborating with everyone. And that's where I see the biggest challenge. We understand the problem, we understand the scale, but we are not collaborating enough. That's my point to everyone.
So you spoke about, the technology as an enabler, technology make people, together. It's a greatest catalyst when it comes to, in today's world. Technology is solving people's problem at the end of the consumers, but also helping the firms to increase their profitability also.
Yeah.
And being a part of, when it comes to profit, sustainability talks about, as we go with the triple bottom line approach, profitability comes with, a lot of efforts that the companies are doing by selecting the right technology. And when it comes to profitability, is one of the component of sustainability, and it is helping the sustainable livelihood. So the things are very much interconnected, very right. So let us take the plastic thing again, and Zablon is something, is the right person to talk about, being the regional coordinator of Asian. He involves into Kenyan plastic value chains and helping other companies also to cope with the plastic value chain issues. So I have a question with you, which is considering your expertise in comprehending the plastic value chains. What is your perspective on contributing when it comes to recycling of plastic waste and putting back into the premium category, or maybe the kind of recycled packaging material, and how upcycling towards fostering a more sustainable and circular approach of plastics? So what is your opinion, and how you perceive that plastic of future, and how the plastic being the biggest and the cheapest and the more economic packaging material is sustaining its journey in days to come?
Yeah, very well. And we've had quite a bit of. I'm going to build on what Munish has said and what also Madhushree said. The plastic is an extremely useful material, right? But the challenges that we're facing now is the management of that. And especially when it comes to recycling, because we are working on like the big corporations and someone's downstream. And the challenges comes in when now that value chain, certain value chains were not even, or certain products were not designed for recyclability. And now when it comes to the recycling upstream, we have a lot of challenges just also to collect the materials. That's the collection of the materials, first of all, and also contamination. So how do we collect plastic material that is not contaminated? Because some of the materials that come within that value chain are contaminated, and this one raises the cost of conversion, one. But at the same time, also that's the collection bit, the cost of collection becomes very expensive. So when you see, and I rightly appreciate the efforts that are being done by the Circulate Initiative to make sure that all the waste workers are covered, especially the most vulnerable. We're talking about waste pickers, and some of these waste pickers are aging, and some of the women who work in these value chains actually come on site with kids. So some of these kids are involved because their parents need to make a livelihood. So some of the things to factor in within these value chains is to create frameworks already from the upstream, or from the word called the intent. When the designers of these beverage industry companies or the packaging companies are sitting down to design products, are they designing with that mindset that this precious material will be recovered and will be used to make future products? So from the drawing board, that consideration in terms of sustaining the system. Then what excites me the most within our context now, not only in Kenya but regionally, is the emergence of policy around holding the producers responsible. So we just launched the EPR regulation in Kenya came to play, and we're seeing a lot of producers now going into the drawing board to design for recyclability, come up with plastic packaging standards. Now, these plastic packaging standards are key to making sure that there's sustainability within the system. Because if you look at some packaging material, there's a trend for lightweighting. But when you lightweight, then the material becomes the value of that in terms of recyclability. Technically, it can, but when it comes to the practicability of that, you're using too much energy to just convert it. Then also sustaining the collection of it. It almost becomes a non-profit sector when you look at recovery of that plastics, because making the economic value of it now becomes a bit difficult when you look at the cost of recovery, especially if it's covering large geographical locations. But what I've seen as an emerging trend is that promise to make high-value products. So we're seeing companies that are making high-value products from that contaminated plastic. So we're seeing a lot of building material. For instance, Vince Plastics is now collaborating to use that landfill they have of hard to use or mixed plastics to make building blocks. And these are modular building housing structures which can be moved over time, and that makes it super valuable. Also, we have companies that are making furniture out of ocean-bound plastics, and I'll talk a bit more about that. But we've seen quite a number, because we have Dunia Designs in Tanzania who are making furniture, and this is like very highly, it's a niche product, and it's used in lodges, mostly for outdoor purposes. We've seen also quite a number of companies or startups or social enterprises making prosthetics from plastics. So these are high value products that are needed the most, and they are rightfully placed. And those models, when you look at their financial, or when you look at their financial modeling, they're able now to break even after a certain period of time. Because the challenge again comes in when the cost of conversion is high because of utilities, let me say energy, and now the financial products on the market won't be able to cover for that. So when you go to a normal bank and you're like, hey, I want you to guarantee me a loan or some financing for these assets, they'll only cover motor vehicles, but for recycling equipment, here they won't cover it, especially they don't have products that cover that. Now the cost lies directly to the recycler to come up with innovative ways or to think about products that are able now to cover his costs, but at the same time also factor in his capex and opex, right? So, and you're looking at also the products that you're making. So if you're making household products, there's that company that's working with virgin plastics, and you are working with recycled plastics. So at recycled plastics, you're covering the cost of recovery from households and communities, cleaning that, and also conversion, while the person who's converting from virgin is just shipping it in. Yeah. So even some of these supermarkets or retail chains, manufacturers of products from recycled plastics are having a really hard time to get even shelf life or just shelf space, because they're being told, hey, we are not really sure how our consumers will view recycled plastics. So there's a huge interface within that circular consumption behavior that also needs to be worked on. So as an approach, it's also now good to look at a reduction strategy for the plastic, so that when we limit some of the virgin that is coming in and we increase the uptake for recycled plastics, then we improve that perception of the material in general. But plastics is an extremely important material, and that's why we need to also invest quite a bit in making sure that we don't contaminate it and we keep it out of the environment.
That's good. That's really good. I mean, multiple industries are helping each other by recycling and recovery of the plastic waste, and it's helping other industry. Right. So, Madhu, I have a question with Madhushree Narayan. Since your engagement is, your engagement spans collaboration with multiple and diverse, stakeholders, and comprising the recycling companies, waste workers, investors, brands, civil society organization, and sometimes the policymakers also. So how do you investigate and navigate yourself when it comes to these partners and your role within when it comes to responsible sourcing practices that you also spoke about, EPR in the brief talk we had in the last question, and how it's helping the overall well-being and the value chain actors, the well-being of the value chain actors, primarily when it comes to the stakeholders, and how during this course of ecosystem reestablishment, how the grassroots organizations and the corporates are contributing and synergizing with each other, how they're helping and coping the situation and synergizing with each other. So what is your, 1 decade experience talks on? So we should know about how these three fundamental forces are coming together: environment, society, and the rest of the stakeholders.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Sudhanshu. I'll respond to that with examples from the work we're doing with the Responsible Sourcing Initiative. I think in navigating this multi-stakeholder collaboration, there are two key things that stood out to bridge the gaps with all these different stakeholders, right? One is our endeavor to create a common language and a common understanding of the challenges that's being faced by every stakeholder in the value chain. And two is bringing everybody to one particular table. Quite often you don't have brands understanding really what happens at collection centers. And I'll share what we've been able to do and some sort of anecdotes from these two approaches. In terms of building a common language and common understanding as a part of the Responsible Sourcing Initiative, one of the work streams that we started the program with is to create a harmonized responsible sourcing framework. It sounds very dry and theoretical, right? But it's become very important to have that understanding of what a responsible sourcing framework means, because a lot of the plastics recycling or recycled plastics sourcing frameworks that brands have in place are mostly built from a manufacturing facility point of view to audit that facility, or a recycling facility to audit that, right? So it's only happening at tier 1 and tier 2. So a lot of the components of these frameworks are also built to address these two tiers and not really look at what's happening at an aggregation center level or at an informal waste collector level. So there's a very clear need to really understand what responsible sourcing means, what are the minimum human rights criteria, practices that can be addressed at every part of the value chain. About 2 years ago, 4 corporates, PepsiCo, Unilever, the Coca-Cola company, and Nestle came together to develop something called the Fair Circularity Initiative, and I'll drop the link in some time. It was one of the first times that, large corporates have identified the importance of informal waste workers and waste workers in actually creating a circular economy. And it's a fantastic initiative, right? However, they have principles in place, which are overarching principles which say no child labor. Now, of course, it seems very intuitive when you say, of course, no child labor is a practice that should be followed in your supply chain. But how do you really address the root causes of why child labor exists? So when Zablon was talking about, women, bringing children to workplace because they need to sustain their livelihoods and they need to have it. You have frameworks for auditing which basically says no child labor, right? So if child labor is found in a supply chain, would you then, terminate the contract with that particular partner or that particular collection center? No. The approach is to actually partner with them to build their capacity to address why child labor exists, right? And what's been very encouraging is that most of the brands take on a partnership approach rather than a penalization approach. It's just that you don't have frameworks that go up till a collection center or an individual waste worker level to do this in a structured way where brands can monitor, measure, and report. It's quite often happening at tier 1, but all of these violations really happen at a much later stage or much earlier stage in the supply chain. So understanding the root cause of why child labor exists, instead of saying, no, you can't bring your children to the workplace, one of the ways to sort of come to a middle ground would be probably giving flexible work hours for the women working at a collection center, right? Being there at particular hours. Now, these are solutions I learned of because we were able to bring all stakeholders together at one table. So when we have waste worker advocates on one table, waste workers on one table with the brands, they're telling us, saying, see, when you're saying no child labor, I don't have anybody else to leave my children with at home. So the solution here is to have, your working facilities create more flexible work hours, provide child support rather than, not working with us, because this is our livelihood. Now, this is the kind of solutions that we hear that's actually needed on the ground when you do a root cause analysis of why these violations occur. There is no one solution fits all in any supply chain across geographies, right? So when we're saying we're creating a harmonized framework, what that means is today, Unilever has a responsible sourcing framework, Coca-Cola has a responsible sourcing framework, fair circularity principles have developed, principles. What we need is simple guidelines, simple operational framework that can be applied until the waste worker level, which everybody can use, which your brands can use, your manufacturers, your recyclers, your aggregators can use. And this can be something that is more easily accessible by waste workers as well. So if they need to collect data, they're able to do it. If they need to report against something, they need to do it. You're considering all the requirements in terms of how easily they'll be able to add this data to all of it. And the way we're doing this framework is we have a third-party organization reviewing existing frameworks, because our intention is not to reinvent the wheel. A lot of good work's already happening, but how do we bring all this good work together in such a way that it's simplified and it's going up to an individual waste worker level rather than just a manufacturing facility level? So what we have done is it's a consultative process where we have representation from waste worker associations, recyclers, aggregators, and brands. And within brands also, you have representation from procurement teams, sustainability teams, and the human rights teams, because everybody has very different targets that they cater to, but they have to work together when you're talking about responsible sourcing, right? So all of them are coming together to review the framework that's being developed, and this framework is built on existing frameworks rather than creating something new. And this is the framework that we'll be testing in the 3 geographies that we'll work in, because for us, it's not about putting out a framework saying, hey, this works, this is how you address human rights. We want to see how this tests on field and take the learnings from that to put it back into the framework at the end of 3 years. So when we say our goal in the next 3 years is to have a framework in place adopted by brands, it's also built on learning rather than just publishing what we're doing in the first act of our program. So the first way to sort of look at multi-stakeholder collaboration for us, Dr. Sudhanshu, has been developing this common language, a harmonized framework. The second way is been to bring everybody together at one table. Earlier this year, when we launched the program, we had a convening in Bangalore where we brought together about 75 odd stakeholders from across the globe. We had corporates such as Unilever, Coca-Cola Company, HP, P&G, Tetra Pak in the room, and we had representatives from the human rights teams, sustainability teams, procurement teams. We had waste worker organizations in the room, Swachh from India, Hasirudala, African Reclaimers Organization. We had representatives from aggregators and collection centers from Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Collection centers working in Indonesia with waste workers. And of course, we also had investors in the room as well, because they're investing in these recycling value chains. What this convening really portrayed was the need for everyone to really understand what happens in the supply chain. During the convening, we had field visits to a collection center. We started off the convening with a field visit to a collection center in Bangalore, right? And it was the first time brand representatives were actually seeing how a collection center looked. And they were very, very surprised by how well the data was being collected and, kept at a collection center level. For example, the collection center we went to was being run by a female waste picker, a woman waste picker who was previously a waste picker, but now is a collection center operator. And she had very meticulous data and the volumes of waste coming, where it's coming from, who's been giving you this. This is the data that you need for transparency, which most brands did not know was available at a collection center level because they often don't go up to that level within a supply chain, right? And the later part of the convening, it was a 3-day convening, it was quite fantastic because we had at one round table, we had a brand, a waste worker organization, a waste worker, and a recycler sitting, right? So when they were discussing the challenges that's being faced and why some of the human rights practices are still not being adopted, you could see that it's not a one-shoe-fits-all solution. So you could understand where the brands were coming from, and there was a lot of understanding in terms of why recyclers are unable to do it or why aggregators are unable to do it. They're resource constrained, obviously, because for them what matters is to have a sustainable business model at the end of the day. So compliance costs are high, so who'll really bear those costs on a long run, right? A pilot is a one-time thing, but you need this to be business as usual. So for me, when we're saying we're navigating multi-stakeholder collaborations, it's been about simplifying the language to make sure everybody in the room is understanding why we're saying human rights when it comes to the recycled plastics value chain and how do you monitor and measure them. And 2, having that representation around the table. We did that with Bangalore last year, and we hope to do a similar thing early next year as well. And the feedback was fantastic because, of course, it was Chatham House rules. So in no way were we publishing what each individual was saying about what was being discussed. But we had key learnings which were anonymized in the report that we published. So when the report came out, it had learnings from the waste worker point of view, brands point of view, and aggregators point of view, right? Representation to build an understanding of the challenges and arriving at a common ground as to saying what is the lowest denominator possible to create the most simple solution that will work was what was needed. So that way, I think for us, it's been as much a learning journey as it's been doing with this program. And I'm hoping in the next couple of years, as we do the implementation projects as well, there'll be more learning that we can bring out to the public.
Yeah, that's really nice, actually. You guys are doing really great. I mean, initiative is something, the set of initiatives that you are doing actually is less. But one thing is interesting, which is what you must have good team for doing good things. So building team requires good team managers, and we have Mr. Munish Chawla with us, who is the happiness manager, happiness officer, chief happiness officer. And as I got to know, because it's a very newly founded position in the corporate, and the role, as I perceived through Google, is of CHO is more fostering a positive and engaging work environment for employees within the organization and outside also. So, sir, the question is with you actually now. And the question is related to how Jeevitam as being a company is into a multiple responsibility for diversified audience. How when it comes to addressing the promising entrepreneurs, those who are inclined to create their career into the domain of this circularity and taking the social responsible business as one of the area for doing businesses. How does Jeevitam is contributing to and supporting to empower themselves and how they are able to link to these future budding entrepreneurs with the vulnerable community? So how Jeevitam is bridging the gap, and what's the role of Jeevitam and how as the chief happiness officer, how you keep your employees and would-be partners so happy and so positive and so sustainable. So please sir, please enlighten us on this. Sir, you are kindly unmute yourself, please.
I just loved, what Madhushree just now spoke, right? It was very, very, for me, enlightening. And, it actually, reconfirmed what I've been saying, that, sustainability is the key, right? If you are able to find a model where each and every stakeholder gets value out of it, the whole chain will be done. Till the time there is a break in that chain, we always will find some problems coming here and there, right? If I look into, I will just, because it's more about plastic being discussed over here, I just go back to my own roots, right? And say, what we were doing in the older times, right? And how we were doing that Raddiwala concept in India, right, was always there. And, what we were doing was what, my friend Zablon has been talking, a sustainable way to collect the plastic, right? Sustainable way to process it and recycle it, right? It has to be an entire sustainable way. So where collection is not happening, where processes is not happening, there was an old model to look at. So I always look into in the older times what we were doing right and how we can integrate into the present environment, right? Asking you a question, see, as a chief happiness officer, my role is to ensure that everyone is happy, right? All the stakeholders are happy, and happiness is for me is a state of mind. आज मैं खुश हूँ, today I'm happy, tomorrow I may not be happy, right? So it may be there. So it is not a one-time effort, it's a continuous effort which I keep doing, keep checking it out, keep checking the happiness quotient of everyone, right? So your employees, your partners, your stakeholders, your investors, everyone has to be happy with what you are doing and what it is there. And what actually makes everyone happy, personally, if you ask me, everyone wants to do good. Everyone wants to do good. There is no one who will say, I don't want to do good, right? I want to do bad. There are only evils, or there few of them may be there, but everyone wants to do in the house. If you are able to help them do good, they are happy with it, right? That's the way the serendipity works. That's the way the whole universe works. So to answer your question, the way Jeevitam looked at, and probably everyone has to look into, the problem you have to look into, any entrepreneur, any startup, right, who is coming out, he has to look into what is the problem he is solving, which is the problem you are solving, and the scale of that problem. Right? So today, when we looked into livelihood problem we are solving, and the scale I gave you, 800 million people, is my target segment. So I said, I am solving a big problem. So every entrepreneur who comes in, every startup who comes in, he has to look into the problem which is solving. That is number one. Number two, the more important thing is, as we did, we tried to find out a sustainable model, right? Today, am I dependent on my donors, right? Always, because donors have their own metrics and own way of doing things. Today, they may give me money. Tomorrow, they may not be giving me money. For my investors and everything, a regularity of revenue is very key. This revenue will come every month, every year, every quarter, everything, right? So we need that, aaj nahi aaya, today aaya, aaj someone got very happy and they gave me, okay, Munish, take $200,000 or take $300,000, and next year they say, oh, I'm not happy still, so I'm not giving you. I can't be relied on that, right? So we need to create a sustainable model, wherein what, Madhushree tried to do was sustainability. Every person, you are making money out of it. So first is scale of the problem, create a solution which is sustainable. And third, look at the impact, right? Important thing is, what is the impact you are making? Whatever you think you came onto it, whether it is really making the lives of the people better. If there is only 1%, life better, you have done your job. You can't make it 100%, right? Do your bit. Whatever you can do your bit, right? And that way, you'll find everyone coming to you and going for us. See, startup is not an easy journey, right? I've been in the startup universe for the last 10 years now. And believe me, it's a very hard work, grinding work, 16 hours I work, right? You have to be really passionate about it. You need to be really, for doing something, if you are trying to, question the status quo, believe me, it's not easy. ऐसा ही होता है, and making those people change to look into, it's not easy, right? So for you need a lot of doses of luck, a lot of doses of hard work, and more importantly, the question which I keep asking God and everyone around, Almighty is, what is that you keep making me move? Because every day when you get up, you have a problem which you say, "Arey, iska ab kya kare?" What we do with this problem? And then God opens another door for you. So if you are doing good, believe me, the blessings, all that you get, it keeps you going on and on and on and on. We need a lot of social entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs with a profit mindset. I'm totally with the non-profit, the amazing work the non-profits do, but somehow I feel they need to have the profit is not a bad word, right? I am a different perspective. Profit is not a bad word. If you look it out, it makes it scalable, sustainable, right? So the problem I always see from a startup point of view, the kind of good work, for me, Madhukar is a great guy, right? The kind of work he has done, amazing work. But for me, always Madhukar, one question, why we are not scaling it up? 30 years, why we are not scaling it up? How can we scale it up? How can we do 10x? I will keep saying that for everyone. That's a very important question for me. So all the social entrepreneurs who are coming in, who are looking at, trying to do something, pick up a big problem. Pick a problem which you think. Plastic waste conversion is a big problem I'm seeing right now, right? The way for me, the learning from Madhushree and everyone over here is the plastic has to be looked into. So I am going to create my own model around it where livelihood, because I look everything from the prism of livelihood. Whether this guy is making money, the last mile, what Madhushree told us, is the last mile making money. If he makes money, things will start working out. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. So, rightly said by you, we need social entrepreneurs with the profit mindset. So, heartfelt thanks to all of you, all the panelists, for sharing their valuable insights. And of course, your expertise is illuminating our discussion and helping the audience as well. And the purpose was to create a kind of junction, intersection between sustainable practices and social impact. So we are successfully able to do it, and our engaged audience, they are really great actually when it comes to coming up with such themes. The purpose is to actually take care of the interest of the audience and to make them more purposeful in terms of what we are discussing. So let's carry the inspiration and knowledge gained today into our daily endeavors also, and together we can contribute to more sustainable and socially responsible future. So I request Ms. Surabhi to take care of the word of thanks, please. Thank you so much.
Mute.
You're mute, Surabhi ji.
Thanks, Dr. Sudhanshu, for moderating the session, and it has been really insightful session. And I would want to thank all the speakers. I think Madhushree had to leave. She has left, and she has asked everyone to, please excuse her because she has a meeting, next meeting coming up. So we want to thank each one of you. I would want on behalf of International Council for Circular Economy, you just all made the right kind of impact through this session. I think all the audiences also, they were quite, it was a quite engaging discussion, and we are surely enlightened. Thanks, Dr. Sudhanshu, for the seamless moderation. And for being the wonderful audience also, I would like to thank all the audience. And if you have any queries which are unanswered, you would like to have any questions, you want to ask any questions, you may write to me on surabhi@icce.com. The email ID will be provided to you in the chat box. And our next topic of discussion in the next webinar, it will be creating a circular economy ecosystem. How can different sectors collaborate to make the transition to a circular economy? This webinar will be held on 1st December, again on Friday. And keep following our social media pages to receive more information on all upcoming events. You can also subscribe to our newsletter for the same. The link is shared in our LinkedIn posts also. And the recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. So I would request all the speakers and audience to share this in your circle to help us in our vision to innovate, inspire, and educate. I wish you all a very happy Diwali. Do enjoy the celebrations over the next 4-5 days. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for your time, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy Diwali to everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
you. Happy Diwali.
Yeah.